Okay. He said say Chav Beis Aleph. Losiris shor ochicho aseo nidochim. You should not see the ox of your brother or a sheep nidochim, which going astray, is salam to him. You turn a blind eye. Hoshek chidem lachicho. You must return it to your brother. This is the obligation of what we call Hashavas Aveda. You find a lost article belonging to a Jew, whatever it may be. You have an obligation to take it, and you consider it a custodian. There's an argument we had in the Gemara, whether he's a Shomach Chinam or Shomach Socha, what's his level of liability if something should happen to it? Is he a Shomach Chinam because nobody's paying him for it? Or we speak about Pluto Rav Yosef, if you remember, that since there's a principle known as Osik Mitzvah Potem in a mitzvah, that when you're engaged in one mitzvah, you absolve from another mitzvah. Let's say it's an item, he has to take time to feed it. It's the animal. Or it's a tapestry, he has to air it out. So when he's engaged with the lost article, he's doing a mitzvah. And then a poor man comes to his door. Does he have to attend to the charity needs of that poor man? The answer is no, because there's a concept of what? So since he's absolved from giving tzedakah to that poor man, so due to the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, a penny saved is a penny earned. As a result of that, Rav Yosef holds he's a Shomach Socher. He has a greater level of liability. Tzemach Lokes Rav Yosef, Rabbi Rav Yosef. Is he Shomach Chinam because actually it's not being paid? Or do we say, since there are situations where he could have gained financially from it, therefore he's a Shomach Socher. Okay? But who appoints him to be the Shomer? The Torah appoints him. Torah gives him that level of responsibility. But the Torah says he's salamto mehem. The times, take a look at Rashi, is salamto, kovi she'enu ki le'enu re'u. You turn a blind eye as if, you behave as if you don't notice it. Lo sireh v'salamto, lo tira oso tishesali mimenu, ze pshuto. Rab Seder omru, homim shato misalim. The times that you're permitted to turn a blind eye, what is it? Zokin v'nech lefich vodo. If he's a sage, a Torah Talmud Chacham, and it's beneath his dignity to engage with it. For instance, let's say he finds a crate of oranges in the street, or a sack of whatever it may be, and if it would be his own item, he would not transport this in public domain, in public view. In that situation, because it's not befitting the status of being a Talmud Chacham is permitted to turn a blind eye, because for his own he doesn't do it. He's not, Torah doesn't impose on him this obligation to do it for a third party. That's Pomim Shatom Salim. The times that you're permitted to turn a blind eye, it's lo sireh b'visalamto. The times, even though there's a negative commandment, you shouldn't turn a blind eye, but the times you're permitted. Another case, the Gemara says, Kohen vu Beis HaKvoros. If let's say the lost article is in a cemetery, the Kohen has to go into the cemetery to contaminate himself. As a result of that, and because that is the only way he's able to return the lost article, he has to go into the cemetery. Visalamto. He's permitted to turn a blind eye. So the Gemara asks, what do we need a pasuk? Visalamto. For a Talmud Chacham, we understand we need the pasuk. That if it's not within the area of respect for him, he'd be compromising his status. He doesn't have to. But a Kohen, I don't need the salamta. We have a principle. If a Kohen contaminates himself, he's a violation of a negative and positive commandment. It says lo yitamo, and it says vikidashto. So if that's the case, we have a principle. A positive commandment does not supersede a negative and positive commandment. So what do I need? This salamto? The Torah says the times you're permitted to turn a blind eye. Said Moran says you're right. This salamto is mainly for zokein ve'nu lefich vodo, for the elderly sage where it's not befitting for him, but for the Kohen, it's based on the principle of ein asay doch lo sevesi, that asay does not supersede a negative and positive commandment. So over there, the Rishonim ask a question: what is the mitzvah of Hashav Zaveda? Literal means returning the lost article to its rightful owner. The Kohen, when he goes into the cemetery, where he sees the lost article, at that point, I mean, he hasn't yet come upon the article. Seemingly, that's a Hersha mitzvah. That's to allow him to fulfill the mitzvah. So what's the Gemara saying? We should say, Asidochalosa, say, the positive commandment should supersede the negative commandment. The commandment only begins once he picks up the item. Once he takes the item, he's ready to take, that's the mitzvah, take the item and be responsible for it. But until you get there, there's no mitzvah saseh. So the Rishonim explain, no, that anything that is needed to return that lost article to the owner, that is the mitzvah saseh. So when you see the lost article and you take the initiative to go for it, that's the beginning of fulfillment of mitzvah saseh. And as a result of that, the Gemara says, if that's the case, maybe you should be obligated to go into the cemetery because he has an obligation of Hashavas Aveda. And that the Gemara says no, because Ein Aseh Doch Lo Svei Aseh, the Lo Svei doesn't supersede a negative and a positive, therefore he has no obligation. But from there, that is the basis for the proof that the mitzvah is not only when you pick it up, but anything that allows you to return it to the owner, that already is part of the mitzvah Aseh of Hashavas Aveda. If your brother is not within your proximity, or you don't know who he is, you must take the lost article into your home. You're responsible for that item until your brother seeks it out, and then you return it to him. Well, it's understood. Until your brother asks for it, you don't know who he is. So it's adrosh achicha. So Rashi deals with it. He quotes the Gemara. Adrosh achicha. V'chisal daitoch shitna lekol she'idrusheyu. I mean, is there even the consideration you're going to give it to him before he asks for it? Elo darsheyu shlo yiramai. You have to do your evaluation when he comes to make sure he's not a charlatan. He may claim it's his, but it's not his. So you have to ask him for very identifying signs to indicate that it's his item. We had a discussion, Simon Muvuk, Simon Ein Muvuk, Simon Minatora, Simon Ein Minatora. What kind of identifying characteristics does he have to give, which would confirm that it's his article, that it's his item that he had lost? Vashivosalo, Shetebo Hashova. Now, this is interesting. What happens if you find an animal and the animal itself doesn't produce income? And as a result of that, if it says you must retain it till you give it back to him, the cost of the upkeep of maintaining that chicken or the animal will actually be the equivalent of, by the time the person identifies his item, the debt, the cost of upkeep is the equivalent of the value of the item that you found. So if you're feeding his animal and it's not producing, so what do? So, and the one who lost it has to reimburse you for whatever the outlay was. If that's the case, you're not returning anything. Because basically, at the end of the day, the item you found is going to be the basis for the payment for the cost outlay to maintain that lost article. So the Torah said, we're talking about that at the end of the day, after being responsible, you have what to return. But if you don't have what to return, because the upkeep will actually consume the value, you know what you do? You sell it. You sell it, and then you keep the proceeds, whatever the value was, that when you locate that person, you give him the value of the item that you found. Okay, that's Vashivoslo. The animal or the item, the cost to maintain it shouldn't be the equivalent, the value of its value. And you have a right to ask for that outlay that you have made on it. An animal which eats, but it produces income, let's say an ox. You could rent out the ox to what? To plow, or for other usages. Yaser v'yochal. She'eino oseh v'ochel, but something that doesn't, let's say a sheep doesn't, you mocher, that you sell. And you keep its value for the owner when you locate the owner. Cheitase lechamoro, cheitase simloso, whether it's his donkey, whether it's his garment. Cheitase l'chol avedus ochihu, and the Gemara deals with everyone. If we already said you have to return his lost article, what do we have to go and delineate? Whether it's the sheep, the donkey, the garment. Cheitase l'chol avedus ochihu, asher tovad bimenu. Whatever that lost article is, umatzoso lo sucha l'salim. You're not permitted to turn a blind eye. Lichbosh eincho Rashi kilo eincho rohoso. Okay, now there's a famous Orach Chaim HaKodesh here that he interprets this pasuk on an illusionary level. It started off lo sire shor ochicho o eseyo lidochim.
Sorry, what pasuk is that, Rabbi?
Pasuk Aleph and Beis. Going back, right? Then it says lo karvos ochicha ilecho. If he's not close to you and you don't know him, you bring him into your home. So take a look at Orach Chaim HaKodesh. You see it? Lo sire shor. Parshu bo lirmos beprotes hatochochos. This parsha alludes that you have an obligation to give tochocho. What's tochocho? To give admonishment. When you see a Jew going off the path, he's nidochim. Nidochim means he's straying. Those who are in a position to give the admonishment, to give the musar, they're obligated to rein in on the people by informing them of their misbehavior. And because of their spiritual status, they're considered your brother. They're brothers. That gives them that special distinction. This is an appellation which identifies the people at the most advanced spiritual level, that only very unique individuals merit this identification of achecho. They have an obligation, we'll see in a moment, that if you see the ox, the Jewish people are considered the holy flock of Hashem. If you see the holy flock of Hashem, he's your brother, because you're a tzaddik, and you have that special relationship, and you see his ox or his sheep going astray. Who has this responsibility? The one who is considered the ach of Hashem, the brother, kamo shekasavnu, nidochim. What does it mean, nidochim? Derech omro v'nidachtu shtech vislem. When a person goes astray and does idolatry, that means he's been off the path in a very serious way. She'ovi over api Hashem yikra nidoch. A person who transgresses the will of Hashem is classified as a nidoch. V'yitzav Hashem lebal te'isalim, and the Torah says to the tzaddik, you have no right to turn a blind eye on that person. You have to take responsibility for that person. Eli yashivim lo'ochiv hu elokei olam. You must bring him back to your brother, which is to Hashem. That person you must bring back to Hashem. V'yitzav Hashem lebal yisalim eli yashivim lo'ochiv hu elokei olam. V'kofa lomar hoshev shivim. It's reiterated. Let's say hoshev toshivim. Skavin ki mitchilo yashivim derech hatov. First, you have to bring him back to a proper path. And that's how you bring him back to his Father in heaven. Okay. That's we're speaking about the obligation of the people who have the ability to bring the Jew who goes astray back. He has the obligation to focus on this and be involved in this process. What about if your brother's not close? What about in the last exile, where people are far, far from where we should be? Ashered v'lo korov, od lo v'lo yadato shenista makates, ven yodea moseh kates haplos. We don't know when Mashiach is coming. We've been in the dark for 2,000 years. Zeisoviv hachokas halavovos ve'amuna v'nitu aregel kasher nenu rose b'dor saluis. One of the causes why Jews go astray is because it's such a lengthy exile. People don't see the end of this. It's just ongoing. And that's the reason why Jews, they get worn out and they get worn down and they're influenced by the societies they find themselves in. So what do you do in the interim? What is so-called the haven where you must take that person that to give him that sense of his Jewishness and the sense of Hashem, you bring him into your house. Listen what it is. It's a Beis HaMedrash. Beisecho, you take him to the house. We're talking about the Beis HaMedrash, where they study Torah. You teach him the way of life and where the light dwells. That he should not stray from the path. And his enemy should not be able to influence him with false perspectives. Ki or Torah tatzileu, was only the light of Torah will save that person. Ner mitzvah Torah, or Shlomo says in Mishlei. Barasi Yitzhara, Barasi Torah Tavlin. The antidote to the Yitzhara is what? Is the Torah. That's the Tav, that's the antidote. That's the Ner mitzvah Torah or. And how long do you have to maintain? How long do we have to stay in this local, so-called this refuge? Adro shachicho, until your brother seeks it out, until Hashem is ready to bring Mashiach, and he's ready to bring this evil to an end. Uomro adro shachicho also vashivesh lo pirish malo olov hakosov kilu beishivim ne oved. The first takes responsibility to bring people to the Beis Medrash, to teach them Torah, to maintain themselves as Jews. Hashem considers that person as if he returned the lost item to its owner. You return that soul to its owner because you maintain that person. Or maybe you could interpret the pasuk. That the Chochem, he has to take initiative to deal with Bnei Yisrael with all his ability, Torah and Musar, ad yom pkuda she'irush Hashem nishmoso. We're talking about the Chochem, it's not being until Hashem brings Mashiach. Until what point do you have responsibility for other Jews? If you're in a position, till Hashem takes your soul. Until the last moment of your life. As long as you're able to be in this position to make a difference in other people's lives, that's your obligation. Then the spirit returns to Hashem. Meaning, what about a person goes and he drags his feet and he doesn't assume this responsibility that he should? He says ultimately, when he goes back, he'll go back in the state of disgrace. There's going to be a claim. What about this? What about that one? You have the opportunity to make a difference in this person's life. How did you just turn a blind eye and let the person go? The Chovos HaLevavos writes, Chovos HaLevavos is one of the only Svarim, Musa Svarim, that's written by a Rishon. We have two, Rabbeinu Yonah, Shari Tshuva Rabbeinu Yonah was a Rishon, and the Chovos HaLevavos was a Rishon. And he writes over there that people don't understand the value of kiruv, to bring a person back to do tshuva. People think, you study Torah and only be interested in yourself, and you turn a blind eye on all these other people. Just the opposite. Because when you bring a person back to Torah, You've made a difference for him and his family for all eternity. When you do for yourself, you're doing for yourself. You're not doing for your others. So therefore, that person, there's going to be a claim against the person who could have, who did not. That's the Chovos HaLevavos. The Chofetz Chaim writes in some of his writings that people make a mistake. That here we find Jews going astray, and you have the ability to make a difference. You should be there to make the difference, because otherwise the claim is a very strong claim against the person. If he did not, we could have made the claim. Again, so people used to say to me, maybe I should get involved with Kiruv. If a person is qualified, is one thing. But if you're going to turn away more Jews than you're going to bring close, something? As the Gemara tells us, as there's a mitzvah to give musar, when you can give musar, there's a mitzvah to keep quiet, where the words are going to actually turn people away from Yiddishkeit. Okay, so you have to know who you are. But again, you don't have to be an outreach person. You behave a certain way, and people say, like the Gemara says in Yuma, that a person who behaves properly, speaks gently in a very refined way, and he carries himself, and he's honest, person of integrity. And what do people say? Fortunate is that Jew that his parents brought him into existence. Fortunate is that Jew that his parents raised him right. That is, he studied Torah. He lives like an observant Jew. It's Kiddush Hashem. So it's not only Kiruv, it's not only by doing full blown outreach. It's being the role model, and people, they admire the Jew, and they see Kishem Hashem Nikro Alecho. They see that you're unique, you're special. That causes that what you represent becomes very attractive, and that's part of the Kiruv. You walk into a shul, and you go over to the person, do you need a sitter? Do you need a seat? Do you need a talus? Do you need a pair of tefillin? Just acknowledge the person. But you walk in sometimes in certain shuls, nobody says a word to you. You're a stranger and you feel like a bump on the log. And when you walk out of there, you're relieved that you're out of there. Because the place, as they said, was as cold as ice. There was no warmth there. But what about if you show that warmth to that person? He wants to come back. You show him the place where he's lost. He doesn't even know he has the sitter upside down. Sometimes. So you show him exactly hold the sitter, what to say, when not to say. Person comes to say Kaddish because he lost someone. And he doesn't know. You give him a transliterated sitter. You should be able to say the Kaddish. Or have an interpretation, whatever it may be, give him some level of instruction. That's all. That's Kiruv. And if you don't, that's speaking, you're turning a blind eye on that person. Also, you should do the same to his donkey and to his garment. Any lost article of your brother, which is lost from him, and you find it, you can't turn a blind eye. The Fishiesh, continue the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Be'odam shloshet dvarim. Aleph hakorv saguf. You have the physicality of the person, the body. Beis chelek haruchani be'odam. Third, you have the soul, which is the spiritual component of the human being. Gimel chelek haTorah mureses chol echad b'Yisrael. Then you have Torah, which has relevance to every Jew. Every Jew has his portion in Torah. You must attend Chamor. The Chamor is Chomer. That's the physicality. What corresponds to the neshama, you should do to his garment. Ki bechina zu tikra simla ka'omram. Pesach Shabbos, Moshe Melech, Tosef Edom. I quoted this more many times. What is life analogous to? A king distributes very elegant, quality garments to his subjects, and he says, I want you to take care of it, because when I come back to recall it, I want them to be in the pristine condition I gave them to you. So the Gemara says, the smart ones, they went and they took care of them, they laundered them, folded them, and kept them in a very safe place. The fools, they went out, they wore them, and they went out, and they worked in the fields, and they shredded them, and they soiled them, Years later, the king comes back. He says, "You have the garments." So the ones who were smart, they gave back the garments as they were given that pristine condition. He says, "You go into the palace." The other ones, they present garments that are shredded, are so embedded with dirt. He says, "You people, you're going into exile, sending you off to some far-off island." So we see it in the Shama is called the Simla. That's that special garment. Shechelik b'dei malchus lavodov. It's literally it's royal garments. It's b'dei malchus. Kneged chelak haTorah v'chein tasachol avedus achicho. The Korah hakosav aveda kmo sheromas Reb Shimon Yochai. Moshel mishenevdol aveda. Mi mechaz achreo. Mi mechazal mi. When you're looking for something which is yours, you go look for who goes. That's the reason a woman is considered the aveda of a husband. The husband goes after the wife, because the wife initially, by Adam, the woman was part of Adam. Because the portion that was given for each Jew, the Torah, that's lost. You hear this? The only one who's able to achieve that Torah is the Torah that's meant to be your Torah. Each Jew has his Torah that he has to study. So that's Avedus Ochicho. That is the Aveda of your brother. And how do you regain it? That by doing tshuva, that's how you come upon it. That's how you're able to come upon that Torah that you lost. There's an Orach Chaim HaKadosh, some other location, he shows that the only reason why when we study, a person has a phenomenal mind, or even an okay mind, and we have difficulties, we can't figure out the Gemara, he says it's due to the Klippa. It's due to what? That when we sin, we create a negative, impure force, and that impurity, which is known as Klippa, doesn't allow us to come upon the truth of Torah. So by doing tshuva, where you peel away that husk, and the neshama is pure, so to say, now you're able to approach the Torah. And that's what he's saying over here. Every Jew has his portion of Torah. That's Avedus Ochicho. He says, "Ube'emtzos hashavoso b'tshuva." Only through tshuva, hine umotzo. That's how you come upon the Torah you have. So we speak about Yogata Motzoso. When you toil in Torah, you come upon its truth. The Yogata is not only in the Torah itself. The Yogata is even in yourself. Reishis Chacham Yiras Hashem, to work and to toil, to bring yourself to a level of where you should be, in your own personal spirituality, and you're fulfilled in the mitzvahs. Seemingly from this, that's included Yogata Motzoso. Yogata, if you do tshuva properly, and you bring about a quality result, tshuva mi'ava, tshuva out of reverence, Motzoso, that avails Torah to you. But if you all overweighed with all this other stuff, and you didn't do tshuva, even if you have that phenomenal mind, you're not necessarily going to come to the Motzoso. You're not going to come upon the truth of Torah.
Rabbi.
It says, so if you want to purify yourself, Hashem will assist you. You can't do it on your own, but you have to want it sufficiently that he should assist you. Now, how much do you have to participate in the process? You know, I want to be a tzaddik. You know, you can want and want and want. You know, I want to be a rich man. You don't go to work. There's not even a chance. You have to take some level of initiative. You want to be a tzaddik, you got to take initiative. How much initiative do you have to take? You got to. Because if what's interfering with coming upon the truth is the klipa, is the impurity of the chet that you have done, so you have to break that husk. How do you break this husk? That's by doing tshuva. Tshuva is not easy. So if you're gato on the tshuva, and what is tshuva? You want to come back to Hashem. And what gives us the relationship with Hashem? Right? It's only through Torah that gives us that ultimate intimate connection to Hashem.
Can you repeat that last statement?
I'm saying the only
No, the
way
Hebrew words, the Hebrew words.
Yisrael v'Raisav Kutsha B'Richu Chadu. It's a famous quote from the Zohar. Yisrael v'Raisav Kutsha B'Richu. The Jewish people, the Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are all intertwined. But you can't attach yourself to Hashem unless you have Torah. And you can't have relevance to Torah if you have no relevance, because you have all these barriers, all this impurity. So you have to remove the klipa, which you remove through tshuva. Then we could talk about approaching Torah. And once you approach Torah, then we could talk about cleaving to Hashem. Okay, we'll continue to Orach Chaim tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem.